Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. Now I'm going to show you how to make a really delicate baby granny blanket. Now it's done in the granny cluster stitch and it's a really delicate one for a little baby. I used a small size hook. I used a 4mm hook. The smaller the hook you use, the more dainty your stitches are going to be. So to do my sample of that blanket, I'm going to use this paint box. It's a baby double knitting. I'm going to use a small 4mm hook. Now, when you want to do a newborn baby granny blanket, the smaller the stitches, the more dainty it is. So I'm going to do my main square in this lilac, and then I'll show you how to change colours with the mint green. So I'm going to use this and I'm just going to do a sample. I'm not going to do a great big blanket. I'll show you how to get your square going and you go around and around and around and make it as big as you like. So we're going to make a magic circle. It's so much easier to use. So I'm going to wrap my yarn around my fingers and cross it over. This is the tail end. Take my hook under where the tail end is, that end, and just pull this end through and then grab a hold of it. Pull the tail, it pulls the loop in, and then take your working yarn around and just tighten it up. So now you've got a loop to work in. We don't need it quite that big. So there we go. We've got our little loop to work in. And I'm going to chain 3. That's 1. Let's pull that a little tighter. 2 and 3. Now we're going to make clusters. Your cluster is made up of 3 treble crochets. If you're in the UK, it's a treble crochet. If you're in the USA, it's a double crochet. So our clusters are going to be made up of 3 stitches. Now that chain becomes your first stitch. I need to put another 2 treble crochets into my ring. So yarn over and just go into your ring and pull your yarn through. Put your yarn over your hook and pull through 2 loops. Yarn over and pull through those 2 loops. So we've got 2. Your chain counts as your first stitch. Yarn over again and into the loop. Yarn over your hook, through 2 loops, yarn over and through 2 loops. So that is your first cluster. I'm going to make my little loop a little smaller. Doesn't need to be a great big loop. Make it manageable. So now I'm going to chain 2, 1 and 2. Into my loop again, I'm going to make another cluster. If you're in the UK, it's 3 treble crochets. If you're in another country, it's 3 double crochets into your loop. So yarn over and do 1 treble crochet, yarn over, it's your second treble crochet, and do a third one. So you've got 2 clusters. Now this is going to be a corner. So what I want you to do now is take your pin, if you're not confident doing a square, and put it in that chain space. Just take your safety pin and that's your first corner. I'll take these ones because we're going to use these 2 as well. My message. Oh. So if you don't have a safety pin, you can just use a piece of bright coloured yarn. Just use a piece of yarn and put that in the hole and then thread it through the loop. Just mark it in or just tie it in, and that's you marking your first corner. Now we're going to chain 2, 1 and 2. We're going to do another cluster into this ring. We need 4 clusters in the ring. So again, your cluster is 3 treble crochets if you're in the UK. It's 3 double crochets if you're in the USA or another country. So that's 1, 2 and 3. Now your smaller hook makes smaller stitches, and it's going to make it nice and dainty. So into this chain space we'll put another marker. Just put a pin in. That'll act as our next corner marker. So we've got 2 pins in like this. We're going to chain 2, 1 and 2, and put our last cluster into the ring. Our last cluster, that's 1, 2 and 3. Now we're going to chain 2, and you're going to take the tail end and pull your ring, and look what it does. It pulls that in really tight. We will put that on a darning needle and just stitch it in at the back. What we're going to do is, this is your chain 3 that we began our clusters with. You're going to do a slip stitch. So into the 1, 2, 3, into the 3rd stitch in that chain, put your hook through, put your yarn over and pull it through, and then pull it through that stitch. So in this corner we'll put our last marker, and we'll keep moving them round by round, and that's you got your markers in to mark your corners. You don't need one in here because we know that's the corner that we're going to be working on. What you're going to do now is, that'll just, so you've got your tiny little square like this. You're going to chain 3, 1, 2 and 3. Now into this we're going to take a little step back. Into there you're going to put 2 treble crochets. That's your first treble crochet of your cluster. So you're going to put 2 into here, just work back into here. That's 1 and 2. So that's that cluster done. When we go all the way around, we'll finish that corner. Don't worry about that gap. That gap is not going to be so big once we've got that tightened in. You're going to chain 1 and move to the other corner. So take your pin out. We'll put that back in a minute. You're going to do 1 cluster, 2 chain and 1 cluster into that corner. Yarn over and go straight into the corner. We've done a chain 1 there already. It's 1, 2 and 3. You're going to chain 2, 1, 2. In the corners we'll always be chaining 2. You're going to put 1 more cluster into that space, into the corner. That's 1, 2 and 3. Now put your pin back in. Put your pin back in that space. We'll take the next one out. We're going into this corner. You're going to put So we're going to chain 1 and move over to this corner. 1 cluster, 2 chain and 1 cluster into this corner. So yarn over, that's 1, 2 and 3. Chain 2, 1, 2 and do 1 more cluster into this corner. 1, 2 and 3. I'm going to put my marker back in. It's a bit fiddly, but it lets you mark where your corners are, so you can see clearly where your corners are. We're going to chain 1 and move over to the next corner. So if you're a beginner, those pins are a really good way to mark your corners. So into here we're going to do 1 cluster, 2 chain and 1 cluster. So that's your first cluster done. Chain 2, 1, 2 and do your next cluster all into that corner. That's 1, 2 and 3. You chain 1 and move over to this corner. Now remember, this is the corner we started in. We've got 1/2 of the corner made. So in here you only need to put 1 cluster. 1, 2, I'm going to put my pin back in that one before I forget. And I need to put 1 more in, 1 more treble. I'm going to chain 2, 1 and 2 and that chain of 3, 1, 2, 3 into the 3rd stitch. We're going to do a slip stitch. So just pull your yarn through and then pull it through that stitch. And that's you got your little square made. And we're going to continue doing this round after round after round. If you need to, keep your pins in the corner. If you don't need to, then you can take them out. So what we're going to do, we're going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and into that space we're going to put 2 treble crochets to complete your 1 cluster in the corner. You're going to chain 1 and you're going in to this space. Every round you'll be working into the corners and the spaces. The corners and the spaces. So we're going into this space, do your cluster, chain 1 and move to the next corner. I'm just going to take my pins out. 1 cluster, 2 treble, 1 cluster, 2 chain and 1 cluster into the corner. You'll always be putting 2 clusters in the corners. Nice dainty little stitches. Chain 2 and 1 more cluster for this corner. Chain 1 and move to the middle space. Now if you think that yours looks too big, you can move down a size hook. If your square that you're making in your stitches are too big, if your tension's too tight, If your tension is too slack, use a smaller hook, drop down to a 3.5 hook, and you'll get even nicer, daintier little stitches, and it won't look so big if your tension is slack. Now I'm just holding the yarn the way it feels comfortable. Hold your hook the way it's comfortable and hold your work. Don't try and copy anyone else. Do it so it's comfortable for you to work. I'm going to just pull that little tail a little bit. I'm going to take my pins out because I don't need them. But that's a good idea with the pins. It helps you to mark where your corners are. So I've done my chain 1 and I'm going into this space. Put my cluster in here, 1 cluster. Chain 1 and we're at a corner. 1 cluster, 2 chain and 1 cluster into the corner. So make your first cluster. That's your third one for that. Chain 2, 1, 2 and put another cluster in the same corner. And 3. Chain 1 and move to the next space. Skip right over that cluster there. You'll always be working into the spaces. And 1 cluster into each space and 2 clusters at a corner. Chain 1 and we're at the next corner. You're going to do 1 cluster, 2 chain and 1 cluster. Chain 2 and do your other cluster. Chain 1 and we'll go into this one. Do your cluster. Chain 1. Now we're back where we started. And this is our corner. We need to put 1 cluster in to finish this corner. Put my 3 treble crochets, 2 and my third one. Chain 2, 1, 2 and we'll close the round into the third stitch in that chain. Pull your yarn through and slip stitch through there. And that's you got your second round done. Don't worry about it looking just a little bit not quite perfectly square because we're squashing it in as well. Once you've got your blanket, once your blanket gets bigger and bigger and bigger, then it will soften down, it will look pretty. And look at that, it doesn't really matter which way round we've got it. It's nice and square. You're going to keep doing that around and around and around as it gets bigger and bigger. You'll get more and more spaces to work into. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do a few more rounds and then I'll come back and I'm going to show you how to change colours. You can have your granny blanket whatever colour that you want. So I'll show you how to change your colour. So I've done some more rounds on my square. This is my little sample and it's really nice and pretty. It's nice and dainty looking as well. It's not great big chunky granny stitches and it's really nice. Look at that. Now I'm going to show you how to change colours. Now I'm going to go from the lilac to this really pretty mint green. I'm just going to cut my yarn and then just pull your knot through. Just pull your knot like that. And that tightens it in there. What you're going to do, I'll just leave that and I'll stitch it in. I'll chop it down a little bit. You can leave that and sew it in at the end. Now you can do this as often as you want by changing the colours, as long as you change it when you're at a corner. So I'm going to get my mint green. I'll take that end out. And I'm just going in here to get inside the ball. So I've got the end of my yarn. Not with a knot in it. So I've got the end of my yarn, and what I'm going to do is, you'll have a much neater transition from one colour to the next if you use a corner every time. I'm just going to pull that tail down out of the way. Put your hook through the corner, and then just pull your new colour in like this. Find your working yarn, that's your length that you're going to be using, and we're going to chain 3. This is how simple it is. 1, 2, 3, and then we're going to finish our little cluster. That chain of 3 counts as your first stitch in your cluster. So we're going to do another 2 treble crochets. So this is a double crochet if you're in the USA. Chain 1 and move to my next space. Do my cluster, make a cluster in there. 1, 2 and 3. Chain 1 and move along to the next one, and that's how you change colours. Make sure that when you're doing each round you've got enough to finish it. Don't finish and change a colour in the middle of the line. It does not look pretty. It doesn't look pretty. Make sure you've got enough to go right around and finish your round before you change your colour. If you don't, just take it back to the next round. Make sure it's a complete round when you change it. So I need to chain 1 and work my next one. And this is how quickly you can get this done. Chain 1 is so soft. This yarn is just so soft and it's so pretty. The pastel shades of this paint box baby double knitting is amazing. It's beautiful. And that is it. That is all you need to do a very dainty granny stitch blanket for a newborn baby. I mean, these will do older babies as well, even yourself. But to make it look nice and dainty, use a smaller hook and use a thin double knitting yarn. Now, I will put a link in the description to Love Crafts where you can get the paint box yarns. They've got lots of different brands. You don't need to get that one. You can get any one that you want. It's up to you. But to make your granny blanket, your little baby granny blanket, nice and dainty, use a small size hook to the next one. And that is what you get. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this round, and then I'll come back and I'll show you what I did to finish the blanket. You will go around and around and around and around and make it bigger and bigger and bigger as you go until it's the size that you want it to be. You can do it any size you want. So I'll finish my round and then I'll just show you how I did the corners, the treble crochets all the way around to finish off my square. Now when you want to do a blanket, you can actually do these squares any size you want and then you can join them together. But the purpose of this video was how to make a nice delicate baby blanket and a nice granny cluster, a nice small granny cluster. Now around the corner of my blanket, all around the edge, I just put a treble crochet into every stitch. I put one in the space and I put one above each of my clusters. So I'm going to chain 3, 1, 2, 3 into the top of every stitch, and then I'm going to put one into the space. So yarn over and put a treble crochet. This is a double crochet if you're in the USA, into each of my stitches. So I've got a stitch there. So make sure you put one into there. 1, 2, and my third one. And this stitch is the one that would go as if it was in line with that. Just put a stitch in. A treble crochet into each stitch, into the top of the stitch. So make sure you pick up the 2 parts of that stitch all the way around your blanket. I'll show you what to do when we get to the corners. So when you've got to the corner, I'm going to put 3 treble crochets into the corner to get me around in a nice sort of semicircle around there. If you need to put 4 in, then you can if you need to make your corner nice and round. I think I will put 4 in. I'm sure that's what I did with the other blanket. Now I'm going to pick up my stitches all along here again, 1 into every stitch, all the way along the blanket. Now you can do as many rows around as you want, like this, and you've got a nice round corner. So I put 4 into the corner and I've got my nice straight edge. When I get to here, I'll put 4 into this corner. I'll put 1 in all the way along, and then I'm going to put 4 treble crochets into the corner and work my way around, and that'll be my little sample done, and it's really pretty. Now you do as many rounds as you want. Pretty, and that is how you do a really delicate baby granny blanket for a baby, and it's so soft as well. So this is a Sirdar Snuggly yarn. So thank you very much for watching. Please subscribe to my channel. Just click on that subscribe button, and if you click on the bell icon, YouTube will tell you when I've put up another tutorial. So until the next time, happy crafting, and I'll see you all again soon. Goodbye.